Now, in a way, Buddhism is not a religion like other religions. Buddhism is actually an investigation into life. You can call it a way of life. You can even call it a science. Because nowadays, as science progresses, there are a lot of things that does not contradict the Buddha's teachings at all. In fact, it corroborates the Buddha's teachings. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha did not need a radio telescope to look into space. He saw and he described space to us. He called the galaxies Chakrawala. Chakra is a Sanskrit word that means a disc, right? It's also a Malay word, right? That means a disc. So he could see that galaxies are flat like a disc. And he talked about 1,000-world galaxy, 1,000-world system. Each world is supposed to consist of one sun. One sun. Whenever you see a star in the sky, that's one sun. And there's a possibility of human beings there. So the Buddha talked about 1,000-world system. That's a small world system. Then the Buddha talked about 1,000 world system. 1,000 of these clusters of 1,000 world, 1,000 of these make up a middle 1,000-fold world. And then the Buddha talked about the great 1,000-fold world system. So just now we had the middle 1,000-fold world system, 1,000 of these again. The Buddha's psychic power was so great now, he could see so far. In addition to this, the Buddha said that the space is infinite. You cannot find the limits of space. And the Buddha also said that time had no beginning and time will have no end. And these are the things that only now Professor Stephen Hawking has verified. But in addition to this, the Buddha said something else which science has not verified. That consciousness can be developed, like the Buddha's consciousness can be developed to be boundless. So like these holy men, when their conscious becomes boundless, then they can know what happens in other parts of the world. Before I came into Buddhism, I went on a long spiritual search. So I was studying these Hindu books, and remember reading one Hindu holy man. He was talking to his disciples, and suddenly he kept very quiet, closed his eyes for a few minutes. Later they asked him why. He said, there's a boat somewhere in Japan sinking. Some fishermen are sinking in a boat. So because his mind is so sort of expanded, he can know what is happening. Now most religions ask us to avoid evil and do good. This you also have in Buddhism. But in addition to that, the third one, very important, is to purify our mind. Purify our mind. A lot of people don't understand why, but later perhaps you might know why mind is so important in Buddhism. Another thing, becoming a Buddhist doesn't guarantee you rebirth in heaven. Some religions, they say that if you enter their religion, you are guaranteed a place in heaven. Not so in Buddhism. You cannot bribe heaven in Buddhism. You have to be a good person. Doesn't matter whether you're a Buddhist or a Hindu or an atheist or anything. If you have a good heart, the heaven is waiting for you. But if you are evil, also doesn't matter whether you're a Buddhist, you will go into the woeful plains of rebirth. The other thing in Buddhism is heaven and hell are not eternal. Heaven and hell are not eternal. But they are so long that they seem like eternal. Especially hell. When you suffer, one day passes so slowly. So miserable, waiting for the day to end. Just like at night when you cannot sleep. If you cannot sleep at night, the hour seems to go by so slowly. So We have descriptions of, some descriptions of heaven and hell in our suttas. So, even though a person goes to heaven or to hell, the time can be so long. Like for example, in the lowest heaven is the heaven of the four great heavenly kings. And the heaven of the four great heavenly kings, you have different types of beings. For example, Nagas. Nagas are snake spirits. Snake spirits. If they want, they can come down to our human plane. And that's why sometimes you get stories of people killing some big snake in the forest. Then after that, they die in a short while. So you have these Nagas. Sometimes people can see them in the forest when, in a very secluded forest, they see very, very huge snakes, because they come down to sort of play in the human plane. And because they are heavenly beings, they can change their form. And then you have Gandhabas. Gandhabas are tree spirits. Tree spirits. Sometimes we call them fairies or elves. They stay in the plants. And the Buddha said there are some that like to stay in the flowers, some like to stay in the leaves, some like to stay in the twigs, some like to stay in the bark of the tree, some like to stay in the hardwood, some like to stay in the roots. So in a tree, in a big tree, you can have many, many of them. That's why sometimes, like our public works department, when they want to construct a road, they bring down the trees. But sometimes they come across a very huge tree, which is inhabited by these very powerful spirits. They don't allow you to bring down the tree. If you try to use a tractor or something, an accident happens and somebody is killed. So this heaven of the four great heavenly kings, their lifespan is supposed to be 9 million human years. 9 million human years. And then the heaven above that is the Tavatimsa heaven. Heaven of the 33 gods. In this heaven, the Devas always like to fight. You have Sakadevaraja and the angels fighting the Asuras. And this story you find not only in Buddhism, you find in Hinduism, and you also find in Christianity. But in Christianity, they say that Michael, the archangel, chased Satan out of heaven. But in the Buddhism, it is the Sakadevaraja, the Devas fighting with the Asuras. Asuras also belong to that same heaven, but they are violent, and they like to drink liquor, and they have a very nasty temper. So, in that heaven, their lifespan is supposed to be 36 million human years. 36 million human years. So as you go higher, then the heavenly beings, the higher you go, then the less violent they become. They don't fight. Not these two especially, the four great heavenly kings and the Tavatimsa heaven, the heaven of the 33 gods. There's a lot of fighting. As you go higher, they don't fight. And every world system consists of 3 levels. The sensual realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. In the sensual realm, all beings have lust, sexual desire. So because of that, you have male and female. Male and female. But in the form realm, those heavenly beings are what we call unisex. There is no male, no female. And to be reborn there, you have to attain jhana. Jhana is meditative absorption, where the mind becomes one-pointed. The mind becomes so strong, and the mind starts to emit light. So, when a being is reborn there, those devas, their body is full of light. And they are so blissful, some of them are always exclaiming, happiness, happiness. And the higher ones are so happy that they can't utter any word. They're utterly happy. It's all in the mind, you see, because they cultivate their mind to be so peaceful. But even then, as you go higher and higher, their lifespan in terms of world cycles. One world cycle is an extremely long time. And the Buddha said, now it's hard to imagine how long it is, but to give you a simile, the Buddha said, imagine a rock, a cube rock which is 10 kilometers high, 10 kilometers long, and 10 kilometers wide. And every 100 years you take a soft cloth and wipe it once. You're only allowed to wipe it once in 100 years. How long will you take before you wear down the whole rock? Extremely long time. That's how long a world cycle is, the Buddha said. So some of these heavenly beings, devas, their lifespan is so long in terms of world cycles. That is why some of them think that they are eternal, that they'll never die. And the Buddha, in our discourses, the Buddha has flown up to the heaven and taught some of them. Because of previous affinity, some of them were his teachers in the past. So because of gratitude, he went to teach them. At first they didn't believe him. And then they thought that the psychic power is greater than the Buddha. Like one of them, he said he will vanish from the Buddha. His psychic power is extremely powerful. So when he tried to vanish, because the Buddha was controlling him, he couldn't vanish. Then the Buddha said, I will vanish from you. Then he asked the Buddha to vanish, and the Buddha vanished. And he could hear the Buddha's voice, but he couldn't see the Buddha. Then only he realized the Buddha's psychic power was more powerful. Then only he wanted to believe the Buddha. Then the Buddha told him who he was in his past life. They were friends before. That's why the Buddha went to see him. Now the misconception about Buddhism, we have these precepts. Lay people are taught to keep the 5 precepts, Pancha Sila. This is the basic moral conduct that a Buddhist has to keep. First one is not to intentionally kill any living being. If you can avoid it, you don't kill. Second one is not to take what is not given to you. That's a slightly better than stealing. If what is not given to you, you don't take it. The third one is not to commit adultery. The fourth is not to lie. The fifth is not to take intoxicants to the extent that you get intoxicated for a lay person. But for a monk, you're not supposed to take any intoxicant if there's any smell or taste of liquor. So these are the basic 5 precepts. Now these 5 precepts are not like commandments. In Christianity, they have commandments: thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. You must not do this. But when we take the 5 precepts, we recite Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. And that means I undertake to train myself to abstain from killing living beings. So you don't say that you guarantee you don't say that you will not kill. You just say that you will train yourself. You undertake to train yourself. So normally people, when they start off, they find it, this precept says I must not kill, but this stupid mosquito is keeping. So initially they can't help it, they'll do that. And then some people say, Omitofo, hoping you'll be reborn in the Pure Land. But then as you, over the years, as you practice further, then it becomes easier not to kill. But these precepts, because it is quite impossible to practice them 100%. Quite impossible to practice that purely 100%. That is why the Buddha said that we undertake to train ourselves to keep the precepts. Whenever possible, we try to keep the precepts. Now, the other thing, another misconception is some people think that if you are a Buddhist, you must be a vegetarian. Not necessary in the original Buddha's teachings. But the Buddha differentiated between a type of meat which is allowable and a type of meat which is not allowable. And the Buddha said the type of meat which is not allowable is when you see, hear, or suspect. That is, when you see that the animal was purposely or specifically killed for you, or when you hear that the animal was purposely or specifically killed for you, or when you suspect that the animal was purposely or specifically killed for you. With these three conditions, then you'd have the direct karma of killing. Okay? Because karma is concerned with intention. If you have the intention to kill, then you are guilty of that killing. But if you don't have the intention, then you are not guilty of that killing. Now a lot of people say, but because you eat meat, people have to kill the animal for you. Yes and no. From the worldly point of view, yes. But you must remember, you didn't ask him to kill. If you asked him to kill, then that meat is not allowable. Or if that person killed purposely for you, also not allowable. So this indirect karma, we cannot avoid it. As long as we live in this world, this world is a world of survival of the fittest. And we survive, we live at the expense of other living beings. That is always the case. Just like the trees in the forest, you see those that grow faster, they come up. And then when the leaves spread out, those trees below, they don't get enough sunlight, they will die. Just for example, you go for an interview, 100 people, there's only one vacancy, one job. Especially now recession, when you are graduate, there will be very few jobs. So you go for an interview, 100 people queuing up for that job, only one job. If you get that job, it costs 99 other people to have no job. So that's the way the world is. Now this indirect karma, even if you are a vegetarian, you also cause the killing of animals, right? You know that for the farmer to grow the crops, he has to clear the land. And our land is not like in Europe, our land is full of forests. Tropical land is full of forests. If you start clearing the forest, a lot of animals die, right? And then after the farmer plants the crops, then when the tupai, squirrel comes to eat, he'll shoot. When the monkey comes to eat, he'll shoot. When the insects come, he'll spray the insecticide. When the snails come, also you'll kill. So a lot of beings die because you want to eat vegetables and these fruits. Now, in addition, for example, we want to stay in a house. Because we want to stay in a house, a lot of land has to be cleared to make housing estates. So in the same way, a lot of beings die because we want to live in a house. And then because we want to use electricity, the government has to make dams. Whenever they make a dam, the river level goes up and floods a lot of areas. So a lot of beings die also. And then because you want to use household goods, cups and clothing and pots and pans and furniture, etc., they have to make factories. In the same way, to make factories, they have to clear a lot of land, and a lot of beings die. Also, every day the government employs people to go and shoot dogs without license. Why? Because if the dogs multiply, these stray dogs, there will be disease, right? So they might become rabid, and if they bite people, people may die. So every day stray dogs are shot in Malaysia. And then like in Australia, every day they shoot thousands of kangaroos and rabbits. Why? Because they eat the crops, right? They eat the crops. So these people, they don't eat the kangaroos or the rabbits, but they just kill and throw it away. So imagine if all of us became vegetarians and we let all the animals multiply. They will multiply so fast, right? To produce one human being, you gotta wait 9 months. But you see the pig, when it gives birth, so many in a short while. And so very soon our highway will be crowded with these animals. Plus got a lot of work to do. So the government will still employ people to kill these animals. So there is no way you can prevent this indirect killing. Another thing people say is because we eat meat, then we indirectly cause more slaughter of the animals. But if that actually is the case, then we also cannot drive a car. Because if you drive a car, you're encouraging the car industry to make more cars. And every day on the road, 2,000 human beings are killed by cars every day, and countless animals. So you cannot drive a car, you cannot sit in a car. You cannot sit in a bus also. Because you're encouraging the car, more cars to be manufactured. So basically the Buddha is telling us, as long as we don't have the karma of killing, that's most important. Indirectly, because we are trying to survive, we will cause other beings' lives. But of course you must remember, if you want to take meat, there must be these 3 conditions. You don't kill, you don't ask somebody to kill, you don't see, and you don't hear. Now, another misconception, this one is this coming to the end, so this is more profound, is that most of us, all of us, we see ourselves as a human being in this world, right? I am this body here by the name of so and so, studying in USM. And then the world is out there, right? This is what we think. But then, to a holy man, some of these Hindu sages, they say, the ordinary person sees himself as a being in the world. But a holy man sees the world in himself. Very strange, A holy man sees the whole world in himself. Why? Because if you really investigate, when you say there is a world, how do you perceive the world? You perceive the world because of seeing, right? You say you see the world because of hearing. You hear the sounds of the world. You smell the smells of the world. You taste the taste of the world, and you touch the things in the world. So these 5 senses make up the world, the exterior world. If you include the interior world, then the 6 senses, the world of the mind also. So these 6 senses is actually the working of consciousness. Normally we think the eye sees the world. Not really. Because when you go to sleep and you have a dream, when you have a dream at night, you're dreaming, you see another world, right? And you are in that dream, and during that dream, it's as real as now, right? So actually it is the consciousness that makes you see. When the seeing consciousness arises, you see. When the hearing consciousness arises, you hear. If all these 6 consciousness stop, where's the world? So In other words, this world is in a way of a nature of a dream. That's why when you think about what happened to you 10 years or 20 years ago, or 30 or 40 years ago, it's just like a dream that went by. So, you find that is why in Buddhism, mind is so important. The type of sights that you see, the type of sounds that you hear, the smells, taste, touch, etc., is determined by your mind. For example, now we see each other. It is because of past affinity that we have seen each other in a previous life that we meet again. So you're stirred up by your mind depends on what? Just like a computer. What comes out on the computer depends on the program you put in, right? So in the same way, what comes up in your mind, the kind of world that is conjured up by your mind, depends on your program, which is the karma. So because of your karma, your actions, if you have a good heart, a good mind, so you have been doing good deeds, after you pass away, a beautiful world is conjured up for you. And if you have done a lot of evil deeds, your mind conditions that you see yourself in hell, suffering. So that is why in Buddhism, mind is very, very important. The whole world is conjured up by mind. Now if you were to explain it scientifically, we can also explain it scientifically. For example, you consider your body. You think that you are this body. What is this body made up of? When you think carefully, this body is made up of cells. Millions and millions of cells, right? The dead cells constitute your hair, your nails, your teeth, your outer skin, your bones. These are your dead cells. And then your live cells are your flesh, your blood, etc. Those are, most of it is live cells. So your body is basically consists of millions and millions of cells. Now when you analyze these cells again, what do you have? Every cell consists of molecules and atoms, right? Molecules and atoms. Molecules are also basically atoms. So, your whole body is made up of atoms, right? Alright. Because your cells are made up of atoms. So your whole body is made up of atoms. Now you consider an atom, you look into an atom in detail, you find that the atom is no different from the sky. When you look into the sky at night, you find that it is 99.999999% void, empty, right? And here and there you see a star moving, a star. So in the same way, an atom is 99.999999% void. And inside you have particles of energy moving to and fro. And these particles of energy now, scientists say, they're not even solid. You have different theories, like the wave theory, the quantum theory, and all that. So, our body, if you think carefully, is 99.99999% void, emptiness. No different from the air around you. This is the truth. No different from the air around you. That is why in Buddhism we talk about sunyata, emptiness, kong in Chinese. Now only now scientists are beginning to realize that this void inside us is not really void. It is consciousness. Consciousness. That is why nowadays doctors say most of our sickness, if not 100% of our sickness, comes from our mind. If you are happy, you're not liable to get cancer and all that. If you are depressed, you got too much stress, too much pressure and all that, then you develop sickness. So, because we are 99.999% void or consciousness, so whatever we think affects the whole body. So, how is it that even though you are 99.9999% emptiness, you see yourself as a solid human mass? This consciousness inside you is projecting yourself as a human being. So you act like a cow or a bull. So you're very likely, in your next dream, you see yourself as a cow or a bull. You see, gu khe, Hokkien they say gu khe, ngao jing, acting like an animal. So you'll be born as an animal. So when you consider that life is like a dream, so it's not difficult to imagine how a being can see itself as an animal. One moment a human being, another lifetime an animal. So I suppose I should end here, and I invite questions and comments.